Is this thing on? Hello, everyone. My name is Lewis Harris, and welcome to the Record in Progress podcast. I was inspired to create this podcast due to the outcomes of the 2024 presidential election, and really the entire election cycle for the United States of America. And I felt at the end of those vote counts that I could have done more. And so I created the Record in Progress podcast to specifically share perspectives and stories and narratives of different people to create mutual understanding and hopefully a pathway toward a more unified society.
hmm
And I'm going to start with my next guest, who's somebody I've worked with in the community and who I very much respect. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin, and I live in Shoreline, Washington. I also run my own consulting business, KPH Media LLC. I'm also the health chair of the Snohomish County NAACP and very active in the community in various ways.
How do you identify yourself?
I
And
identify myself as a heterosexual male, African American, he, him pronouns. I am Christian. Sure.
it's really to help audience understand the folks who are talking,
Sure.
get some better perspective, which is very excellent, excellent. And that kind of touches on what you do. I also know that your day job is focused around mental health, correct?
Right. I'm also the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Coordinator for Volunteers of America, Western Washington in the Behavioral Health Department. So I work directly with mental health counselors around issues of conflict management, mediation, diversity, equity, inclusion, cross-cultural communications, those type of topics.
Excellent. So you have a wealth of knowledge around people, really.
I'm just old.
Okay. The next question is, and this question is really to help our listeners better understand how you identify with the job market. And so, what is a credential that you use most often to sell yourself on job applications?
I would say about 40 years of experience in the realm of diversity, equity, inclusion work, consulting, training, along with over 35 years of journalism experience as well. I have a degree in radio, TV, film. So I tend to mush that all together.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. So, the first real question, all of it's real, but the first question about this podcast episode is, how did you vote in the 2024 presidential election?
I had no problem supporting the vice president, Kamala Harris.
Excellent. And for our listeners, we're just trying to create some context around the
Sure.
conversation. You voted for Vice President Kamala Harris. What are three feelings that you have about the results of the 2024 presidential election?
Wow. Only three. Three feelings that I have: frustration, cynicism, and hope.
Okay, interesting. Do you wanna explain a little bit or expand
Oh,
on that?
sure, sure. And those are, I think we're talking about a process. It's just like a grieving process, or if you suddenly get fired from your job or whatever, you go through these different phases. So I think there was this frustration that developed that, oh my goodness, how could people not see that who the right choice should have been in this situation? And then where did we go wrong? It's just this kind of shock, I think, and frustration. And then you move into, my goodness, if this is the state of the world that we live in, the state of this country, I'm looking at the future in a very pessimistic kind of way then. So that's where the cynicism comes in. But then in surrounding myself with like-minded people and people that I even went to an online support group the other night for 2 hours, you start to get re-energized. And then you start to think, hey, almost half the country did vote for her. So, I mean, there are people out there that can see the light and see what needs to be seen and are willing to take action. So we just need to maybe re-strategize, look to the future, and just be very diligent about moving the needle forward in a positive way. So that's why I had all three of those emotions.
Okay. Thank you for elaborating on that.
Sure.
And you said something that a lot of us who are on the losing side have been seeing on our social media feeds about finding community as a part of the healing process. And can you just, you mentioned the online forum where we're able to do that. Can you just,
Right. There's an org.
yeah,
Sure. There's an organization called East Side for All that they were doing a hybrid situation. I couldn't get all the way out to Redmond. So I went online, but there's all of these online groups, Facebook groups. I know you're aware of some of them. Change the Narrative, Granite Falls, and other ones that are in Snohomish County where people can come together and share information. They can support each other. And I think that's part of the healing process. Just if you, like I said, if you were in a grief group, what do you do? The worst thing you can do is isolate yourself. So I think you need to get out and be around people that are experiencing the same feelings. And I think together, that if you get around people like that, you can re-energize each other, I think. And hopefully it has a contagious feel to it, much like Alcoholics Anonymous or something. You got to have a plan, I think.
absolutely. And I want to dig a little bit deeper because of your expertise. The isolation that some people might feel, right? Me, and I'll use myself as an example. Like I'm a very extroverted person, but I also have a very introverted side. And like I oftentimes find myself in the frame of thinking like, oh, I don't want to go outside. I'm very comfortable in my house. I don't want to see people. I just want to be in my pajamas, do my own thing at home because that makes me feel better. But there's
Mhm.
pitfalls to that.
Right.
Especially if you get to the extreme of that isolation and think that harming yourself is, and I want
Mm.
to touch on that because one, you have expertise, and two, I know there are people out there who are on the same side as us in terms of the outcome of the election that might feel like that's an option for them. And
Mm.
I'm just curious if you have any wisdom or thoughts around either those people isolating or people who see those people isolating. Like,
Mhm.
thought,
And I'm not a psychologist, but I think what happens when you isolate, and I've talked to a lot of people that have gone through depression and gone through anxiety. I work around several mental health counselors, and I bounce things off of them. And I think what happens is if you isolate yourself, you start to create this new reality for yourself where you're not getting fed in an emotional way and in a spiritual way. And then all of a sudden, like I said, that anxiety increases, that cynicism, because you're not getting anything to counteract it.
right,
Whereas some people go to church, some people just go for a walk, some people join a meetup group. That's so important to, as difficult as it might be, to get off the couch and walk out the door. For me, it's much the problem I have with exercising sometimes. Once I get to 24-hour fitness,
yeah,
I'm great. I could exercise, do everything, but it's just that, do I really? Oh, I don't know. I'm so comfortable on the couch. It's raining outside, whatever. But I know that the healthiest thing I can do is to force myself. And I think that the more you do that, the easier it becomes. You can call a crisis line. Just hearing another voice, an empathetic, sympathetic voice, as opposed to a voice that's going to gaslight you and tell you, oh, what's the big deal, Lewis? You just got to get over it. That's some of the worst advice you can get is just get over it because you can't make emotions disappear.
thank you for that. And thank you
Sure.
for the work that you do in the community professionally as well. So my next question is, what do you fear most about the next Trump presidency?
Depending on how cynical I'm feeling. He and his party have said so many things that make it sound like we're going back to the 1960s. I was a kid in the 60s, but I remember segregation. I remember Martin Luther King getting killed. I remember how my parents and myself could be treated by just overt, blatant racism, and it was normalized. It was just you just learned to live with it. And then I see the appointees, the people that are surrounding him are these people that not only it's one thing to disagree politically about taxes or even gun rights or anything like that, but there's so much hostility behind it. And that's what worries me is that it's a lot of the racists that exist in this country, and not everyone who voted for him is racist. I don't feel that way. But if you're racist, you probably voted for him. So the thing is, they become very emboldened empowered. And I can get online right now and hear about like that that spamming thing that happened for all these people. A lot of black people got this spam. You should look it up on their cell phone saying the van is going to come pick you up and take you out to pick cotton. That
Oh
kind of
yeah.
thing is, yeah, it's happening all the time, every day. And I see it increasing. And I also, what I don't see is I don't see a lot of Republicans or Trump. I never see Trump condemn it.
Right.
So it becomes, oh, what's the big deal? And if you're racist and you're not the target of the racism, it's just easy for you to either perpetuate it or try and justify the behavior by saying, I'm just protecting my right to do X, Y, Z, which is one thing. But then when you target someone else and debase someone else, that's a whole different story. That's anger, that's hate. And that's something I see increasing. Now, I don't know, maybe there'll be a movement like Black Lives Matter that can, or something like that, that can counteract that as we build allyship. I think it's
Mhm.
really important to build allyship right now across all cultures and sexual orientations and religions.
Okay, the next question though is what, even though obviously you voted against Trump, what do you hope most about the next Trump presidency?
I'm hoping that some sane, reasonable, non-racist people will either deter him, change his mind. I mean, there's people that have stood up against him. I mean, John McCain stood up against him. That's
Sure.
why he started trashing John McCain
Sure.
way back when. So I'm hope that's what I would like to see. I'd also like to see, as I said earlier, more allyship. When Black Lives Matter happened, you saw people from all different cultures. You even see the Amish or some people in different countries that were
Right.
protesting. And I think that's what needs to happen because that's what happened that I think helped turn the tide in the 60s, that when Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act and that kind of thing, was that what happened was the media was people in other countries were seeing black people being kicked and beaten and having hoses put on them. And that's when I think Kennedy, I believe, said, we got to do something about this. It's got to be that shock of, wait a second, wow, this can't go on. But that has to come from the entire country.
Right. Right. No, and thank you for saying that. One of the things I'm thinking is, or at least one of the things I've been tussling with as somebody who's affected by the results, is where did the decline start for enough good people to
Hmm.
vote for him? Right. Because I have a sociology background, which I know
Mm-hmm.
you understand and appreciate. And it's to understand societies, just anything, you have to understand the history, right?
Hmm.
And I look at the last 15 years, that's usually my mark for understanding the world that we live in today. We had the Obama presidency, we had Black Lives Matter, we had the women's marches, we had all of these uh, monumental social changes,
Hmm.
or at least social footing or direction in the degree of change, where we are now seems like all of that might be lost. And so I am curious what you think might have been the cause. Like, what if you could point to something, what might it be?
I think at its root is fear. And I think that Trump did a great job at tapping into the fear that exists among a lot of, and it's not just white people, but a predominant amount of white people in the country, that they're losing power, that their lives are changing. There's a backlash. I think that Black Lives Matter, Colin Kaepernick, the women's movement, Pride Month, all of those things have instilled fear or fueled already existing fear on the parts of people who lived in the country. So I think because a lot of the campaign rhetoric, that hateful rhetoric that came out, it's one thing to say we need to fix the immigration system, which I'm sure it does need to be fixed to some degree. It's another thing to demonize people and to call people savages and it reminds me of almost like desegregation. It's like, oh, if you let those black people move into the neighborhood, you know what's going to happen. And it creates this hysteria. Then you couple that with a lot of misinformation. It used to be, and I have a journalism background. When I was in journalism school, you were taught to be accurate and vet your sources, be objective. Not like that anymore. But you can get online and hear all kinds of things. So I think that fueled that fear. Oh, did you hear that? What the guy on the podcast said about the great replacement theory?
Right.
Democrats are trying to get more immigrants in to vote for them so that the white people will be in the minority and all this other stuff.
Right. Okay. Wait, so the next question is, what do you believe about the people who voted opposite of you? And you did allude to some of your beliefs about the opposite side already. I
Right.
just want to circle back on some of that.
Sure. I put people in, of course, you don't, I only know so many people, right? So I really do treat people as individuals. But if I had to create these little groups, I think that I know some people that I know personally that are not racist. They're married to other people of color and all this. I don't doubt that they're not racist. I do think that a lot of them have been misinformed
Mm,
about things. And they've also, that fear of all kinds of things that might exist in their hearts has been intensified by a lot of things. So I think if you believe something strongly enough, then that's your reality. You might be a great person, but if I believe that my neighbor next door is going to rob me as soon as I leave and go to work, I believe that I'm
right,
going to react to that, whether it's true or not. So there's that category I feel that are misinformed and very blind. There's other people that are far more irritating that I think are misinformed and not willing to listen. They
right,
just dig their heels in and just keep spewing misinformation. And I think that with them, I think it's the fear of possibly being wrong. If you fear you're going to be wrong, you just keep digging into your delusion, really. And then there's just the hardcore racist people who didn't vote for Obama, would never vote for a person of color. But rather than say that, they use all these other excuses. It was the policy and it was the
right,
economy and all this other stuff. But I think one other thing I would just add is that I think there's just a real lack of empathy that I see. It's like when a lot of marginalized people were saying, hey, hate crimes are going up. People are creating acts of racism all over the country because of your candidate. Because people don't have that same lived experience, they just brush it off. They brush off the racial slurs, they brush off all that stuff, or they deny it like, no, that wasn't really racist. How
right.
would you know living on a farm in Idaho what
No,
racism even is in your homogenous social bubble that you live in?
that's right. That's interesting. You hit on several themes that are, in my opinion, extremely important, right? The misinformation, the empathy, but you also talk about the bubble, right? And one of the hard things for me was realizing that I'm in a bubble, right?
Mm,
And most of us in Washington, we're obviously a blue state. We were part of the blue wall. All of our local elections went Democratic.
right.
But to learn that our views about human equality or empathy or compassion or fixing systems to be equitable or equal to everybody, that is not the majority of what America believes.
Mm,
And so one of the bits that I've been reconciling with is, am I delusional? You know what I mean? And what's hurtful about that realization is that as a good person, my goodness is delusional to the rest of the country.
mm,
You know
mm,
what I mean? And it's like we believe in these tropes that light will always,
mm,
darkness, goodness will always eventually, be evil.
mhm.
And this is an example where that is not true. Okay, you know what I
You're
mean?
not delusional.
Yeah, I'm not delusional. Thank you.
You're not delusional.
Thank you, sir.
But part of the weaponry is to make you think, to make you doubt yourself.
Sure.
And I hate to keep going back to the 60s and 70s,
Nope.
but it's the same thing then. Fortunately, I lived in Los Angeles, which is fairly liberal as
Yep.
opposed to the South or someplace like that. But I had a very good self-image. My parents had very good self-image. I'm blessed to have two great parents. But I was seen if wandered into Beverly Hills driving my mother's big Chrysler, I was seen as something different. Somehow I
Right.
was seen as a threat. I was seen as, oh, there were a couple of times when I was dating someone's white daughter, and you would have thought that I committed the worst crime in the world. I saw parents disowning their kids, and I saw people who came out as gay, and suddenly they were kicked out of the house because because the funny thing is not funny, but the thing is, I'm your son. Now I say, oh, by the way, I'm gay, and now all of a sudden I'm the devil. How could I
Right.
go from being your son yesterday to something entirely different. Or as a Black person, I'm fine if I'm your daughter's friend at school, but as soon as we go on a date, somehow I've changed. I'm like this different person to you. I represent something entirely different.
And I think that speaks to the bubble, right? The bubbles that we find ourselves in. And everything is fine until you are seen as outside of somebody's
The
bubble,
bubble,
and then
right?
you're different and you should be treated different
Yep.
when nothing actually changed except the authenticity that person
Mm,
is conveying to you. So
right.
interesting. That's another extremely good thing. I'm so glad.
Well, I wanted to bring up one other thing, and I should have added this to the bubble, is that there's also the echo chamber that's part of the bubble. So then you surround yourself with people in your bubble that
Mhm.
basically just regurgitate whatever you're thinking and saying. So this is all you hear. So it's reinforcing a lot of stereotypes and whatever. But what's laughable to me and ludicrous is when I've got into some arguments with, and it's been white people living out in rural somewhere USA who's going to sit down and tell me what racism is or isn't. And I'm thinking, you live on in the middle of nowhere and you might have one Black friend or one
Mhm.
Asian friend. So therefore, and they represent all the Black people because they say things like my Black friend says, the one person out of how many millions of Black people are here in the country, he represents the other 50 million. But that's what I would hear is Candace Owens says it's okay.
I want to say God bless America.
Uh,
The verdict is still out at this point, which
no, boy.
just for listeners, I know that myself and my friend Kevin here, really all of my guests are proud to be Americans
Oh, absolutely.
to the degree that, I mean, we're proud of the country. We just believe that it can be better than what it is at times, right? That
Mhm,
that's
absolutely.
it. Okay. So thank you again, Kevin. The next question I have is, what is the worst thing about society?
Ooh,
I know it's a broad question.
no, I got pretty quick answer because it's always on my mind is lack of empathy.
Okay.
It's just across the board, and I understand I'm not no one's perfect. I've been unempathetic myself at times, but I really try and put myself in the other person's shoes.
Great.
And I see people I've seen it in churches, I've seen it everywhere in different ways of people just saying, "Lewis, this is the way I see it, and so this is the way it is. And if you come to me complaining about something and I tell you, go take a walk or just let it slide off your back, Lewis. You gotta be tough."
Right.
That's what I hear. That's really disturbing to me sometimes.
It's interesting. And no, I agree. And I think that it's a shame because that's part of the delusion that I feel like I'm reconciling it. Oh, I thought people cared about other people a little bit more, but
I think that, as if they're forced into a certain situation, it's not that they're uncaring, but I think it's very easy when you have no accountability to
right.
brush something off. Now, if you're driving down the road and somebody gets in an accident and a group of people jump out of their cars, and you can go, "Oh, I'm gonna go home." But if it's just you and that other person laying on the street, then it's like, "Oh, man." I think that's when people will get in touch with their empathy, but we've become such a harsh society. Look at
Right.
social media. That never for social media, you'd get sued for libel and slander for about 50% of what I see on social media. You know what I'm talking about. I can't just disagree with you. I got to call you a bunch of names and make up stuff about you and talk about your family. And then we see it in politics. How many times did Trump insult the other candidates or the other nominees? Remember, he's calling people's wives dogs and all this other stuff. And people thought, oh, that's the way it is.
Okay, so the next question is, what do you believe is one of the reasons that Trump and largely the Republican Congress was elected?
I think it goes back to that fear. It's just fear is a thing it's like panic attacks. Panic attacks in a lot of cases are the result of nothing. It's
Right.
something in your mind that says, I have claustrophobia. So if I get trapped in an elevator, I start having a hard time and I start physiologically feeling things. To me, this is the same thing. It's that fueling that fear. It's the same hysteria that I would see on the faces of those people who didn't want Ruby Bridges to go to desegregate the school back in the
Right.
60s. If you look at the pictures of these people, they're like losing their minds. But the day before, they were probably selling Girl Scout cookies out in front of the church. The same piece.
Right. Right.
And so I think people have been swept up in that. And it's, I've got to do something. Like the people who stormed the Capitol, I don't think all those people were bad people, but they
Mhm.
got caught up in the hysteria where if I don't go down there, my whole life is going to change. And it's the end of the country as we know it. That's what was in their mind, even though that wasn't true.
So that's another good theme. Thank you so much for your themes. Um, it's the feeding fear begets fear. If Trump and the Republicans capitalized on messages of fear, which created more fear, created folks to want to vote to quell that fear as best they could, which they believe Trump and Republicans can do. You said something else though that was also really good.
I could
Yep.
add too, I think that there is some simmering racism in this country that sometimes people don't want to acknowledge. And sometimes it's within themselves. Because I do think that it's like you can know somebody for 20 years and you have too many beers with them one night and all of a sudden they're saying stuff and you're going, what in the world? I had no
Right.
idea Lewis thought like that about certain people. I've been shocked and had to unfriend some people because things came out of their mouths that I was like completely shocked at. So I do think that adds to it. There is a certain element of racism among a certain percentage of the country who are just racist people. But they look for excuses to behave a
Right.
certain way. And so they have to perceive a threat or get you to think, oh, I know why he did it. It's because if he didn't do it, they were going to come and do X, Y, Z to him.
Hmm. Okay. That's great. Next question is, do you feel like did enough to affect the election in the way you wanted to see it go?
Oh, I never feel like I do enough. But that's a fleeting feeling. In some ways, I felt like I did a lot. But I think what I like to do the most is I don't like, even when I do DEI trainings, I come in and I say, look, I'm not telling, because usually it's predominantly white people. I said, I'm not here to tell you what you should think or what you should do when you walk out the door. But I am here to give you information that I'm pretty sure you don't have. Because
Mhm.
one of the biggest things that I've seen where people making decisions, whether it be in elections, is a real lack of information or and especially historical context.
That's
And
right.
these are the people that say, if George Floyd just hadn't resisted arrest, nothing would have happened to him. They have no knowledge about the decades and centuries of law enforcement weaponizing their racism and attacking people of color. They don't know that. So I'm saying, let me give you some context to add to your
And
thoughts.
I would also say that it's not necessarily that they don't know that, but they don't operate from the frame that they're a product of that, right? And that
Mhm.
everything around them is a product of that history.
Good point.
And to not give grace about how somebody believes based on the generational trauma that they've experienced in their family or in their community, that shows that lack of empathy that you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
So that connects absolutely well with what you're saying. Yeah, that is something I've seen too, and I'm glad I'm not the only one who saw that. Yeah. The next thing is, what do you want to say to the version of you in 4 years?
The version of what do I want to say to the version of me? So 4 years from now, I'm talking to myself 4 years.
Yeah. What do you want to say?
Probably something along the lines of never let the cynicism and the I guess the possible negative thoughts detour me and never always go with your gut feeling. I think sometimes this has been so hard sometimes to and just hearing the gaslighting and some of it's so ridiculous. But then every once in a while I think, am I missing something here? And then my gut says, nope, you're not missing anything because people will, because of their own reasons, they feel threatened by you or whatever, will try and detour you, distract you, deter you, tear you down, get you off course. So I guess that's what I hope I answered the question. I would tell my future self is always keep that with you. Trust your gut and your heart.
Good. That's great. That's great. Captain, we've asked all the questions.
Oh, good. Okay.
And the conclusion I say at the end of all of this is we are all different, but we are all also the same.
Mhm.
whether it's what we believe, how we breathe, mouth breathers versus nose breathers, or the food you like. Doesn't matter. There's things that connect us and there's things that divide us. But what matters is us recognizing that we can move forward together to make a better world for all of us.
Mhm.
So that's my hope at the end of this podcast, if it ever ends, that we will see the differences, we will see the similarities, and we will choose to move together forward together to make the world a
Mhm.
better place for everyone.
And I think that's wonderful. I really commend you for that because it's very easy to really get just mad, and then we become who it is that we don't want to be because then we start stereotyping people.
That's right. That's right. And that's yeah. It's just I might have you back again, Kevin.
Oh,
That's
sure.
me because you have a
Oh,
lot of great
hey,
points.
I'd love to come back. And if you're looking for more guests, let me know. I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people. I don't think there'll ever be a shortage of guests on the show.
Yeah, yeah, and my inclination is to lift everyday voices and just lift voices of folks who just have differences. I'm not looking for credentials. I'm not looking for any type of person. I'm just looking for understanding.
Anything I can do to help, let me know when this comes out. I'm always following you. So I look forward to seeing you, whatever that is.
Thank you, Kevin.